So, do you think it's possible to invest in American stocks, with $100 here in Nigeria? Now, the reason I ask this question is that many people, especially in Nigeria, they think that, you cannot invest in US stocks. All right, so everything has to be Nigerian stocks. So, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to invest in S&P 500 index fund with just $100. And if you are somebody who is interested in investing, I want you to first of all subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell so that whenever I drop any video, you'll be the first person to be notified. So let's get started. So first of all, what is S&P 500? All right, so S&P 500 comprises of about 500 companies from the United States. All right, so these are very big companies that are reliable. And also the reason why people invest in S&P 500 is because it's one of the most reliable investments that you can get yourself involved in. And the reason is that if you put your money in S&P 500, you are not just putting your money in one company. So that is why many people like to invest in S&P 500. So you are going to be putting your money in 500 companies, which means very low risk. All right, of course every investment carries risk, and before we continue, remember, I'm not a financial advisor. Please always make sure to do your own due diligence. Make sure you do your own research before you invest in any company or stocks. All right, another reason why people like to invest in S&P 500 is that it's kind of stable. All right, it's not just like a stock that you put your money and then you are scared, because if you put your money, let's say, in one stock, before you know what's happening, it can go down, you can lose your money, and you can also gain your money. That one is more like, should I say, 50-50. All right, but S&P 500 is not like that, because most people invest in it because of and basically is for long term. So if you are thinking you are just going to put your money now in S&P 500 and then you make your money back instantly, it doesn't always work like that. So it's basically for long term investors. So if you are somebody who is patient enough to invest long term, and then this might be what you have been looking for. And another reason why you should invest in S&P 500, especially as a Nigerian, is because naira fluctuates like most of the time. There's always devaluation of naira. Of course, we've seen from the recent years that naira, our currency naira is not a stable economy. It's not a stable currency, so it always fluctuates and things always go higher. Like every month, every year, we see a lot of depreciation in naira. But the dollar is more stable than the naira because of the United States economy. All right, so this is one of the reasons why people like to invest, in S&P 500, because of the dollar, stability, the assets of the dollar, and also the depreciation of the naira. So people want to put their money in, companies that are more stable, over the years. And also, if you're just putting all your money in Nigeria, market, of course, it's taking you are actually taking a high risk, because you cannot. Nigerian market is something that is very unpredictable. Of course, no investment is predictable, but there are still some investments that to some extent that are trusted more than the others, like the US market. All right, the economy is kind of a stable economy more than the Nigeria economy. So if you are just putting all your money in Nigeria stocks, I'm not sure you are doing yourself any good completely. So you should also learn to diversify and invest in foreign currency. And with this, you will be able to build a long-term, investment. So, and the good news is that you can actually invest here in Nigeria. So you don't need to travel to the US, to invest. Years back, it was very hard to do that. Sometimes you may have to need, you may have to find somebody outside to help you do these things. But nowadays, it's not like that. So you can just sit, down with your phone, and then you start investing in the US stocks in minutes. And also, you don't need a US bank account to do this. And the good thing now is that there are some platforms that you can use to do this. And one of the platforms I like to use is Bamboo. So it's one of the most popular apps out there that you can use, that is built, specifically for the US stock market. So I'll leave my code and the link in the video description so that you can sign up and start to invest, using Bamboo. Of course, there are other apps that you can use, but just make your own research. There are a lot of them out there that you can use to invest. But the one I'm recommending, just one today, is Bamboo. All right, so there are some things that you need to get started. So the major thing, of course, that almost everybody has is your phone. All right, that's just what you need. You need your phone and your internet connection. Another thing you also need are your government issued ID, IDs like NIN. If you have an NIN, you are good to go. And then if you also have an international passport, you can just use that to sign up for Bamboo. And also, if you also have a driver's license, that one is something that you can actually use. And the other thing is a way to also fund your dollar account. So you don't even need a US bank account to do this. They have an option where you can just, go there, from what you are seeing here, you can just go there, fund with your normal app, all right, your Nigeria app. From there, you now convert it into dollars. So that's just the way it is. Very, very simple. All right, so once you have created your account and you've uploaded your documents and done your verification, the next thing right now is to search for, the S&P 500. So from what you can see on the screen here, you just follow the process. You just go to your search for ETFs like a VO. You can even search VO S&P 500 or Vanguard S&P 500. All right, so you just click on it, and then that's it. You click on buy, and then you make your purchase. Then after you've made your purchase, automatically it's going to show in your dashboard. All right. All right. So, and like I said, if you want to really understand how to do the whole process, make sure to watch. I'm going to be leaving the link in the video description. All right, so that you watch that full video to understand how to actually, buy the stocks to invest in S&P 500. And another thing you need to understand is that our advice, you leave your investment for long term. All right, don't just invest today, tomorrow you're expecting to make money. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but you should leave it for a long time, because sometimes stocks go up and they also come down. But research has it that for the past years, S&P 500 has, actually be doing well. So it's one of the best investments that you can actually do. So just leave it for a long time, and over time, it's going to start growing. Because sometimes you need to also understand that some of these platforms like Bamboo, they have fee, all right, so that when you make some money, you are trying to withdraw your money, you don't lose most of your gains. All right, so you just leave it to grow to some extent. After that, then you can then put your money in. Then after that, you can then withdraw your money. So long-term investment is actually the best. And some of these companies also give you dividends. So once you make your money, your profits, your dividends, and then you can also reinvest it. That is how to grow your portfolio over time. And also, one thing I have to say is that any platform you are using to invest, make sure it is regulated by SEC, Security Exchange Company. All right. So there are other ones that are also like Bamboo is regulated by SEC. So just make your research. Bet Bamboo is regulated. So any other one that you want to use, you just check and be sure that they are regulated. Because if they are not regulated, then you are going to be risking your money. But as long as it's regulated by SEC, then just know that you are good to go. SEC is Security Exchange Commission, SEC. And also the idea of switching from one platform to the other because you want to make money, it doesn't really add up. So what I would advise, try to master one platform. And then over time, when you start growing, you can start switching to other platforms. So the best thing is to start small, since we're going to be starting with $100, and then maybe every month, if you can begin to add some money. That's how your money begin to compounds. You know, so this is how to invest in the S&P 500 if you are somebody that is from Nigeria. So if you love this video, make sure to subscribe, share, and then like and leave a comment below if you have any question. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you again in the next video.